Welcome to Equine Assisted World. I'm your host, Rupert Isaacson, New York Times best-selling author of The Horse Boy, founder of New Trails Learning Systems and LongRideHome.com. You can find details of all our programs and shows on rupertisaacson.com. Here on Equine Assisted World, we look at the cutting edge and the best practices currently being developed and established in the equine assisted field. This can be psychological, this can be neuropsych, this can be physical, this can be all of the conditions that human beings have that these lovely equines, these beautiful horses that we work with, help us with. Thank you for being part of the adventure, and we hope you enjoy today's show. Welcome back to Equine Assisted World. Today, my guest needs no introduction. It's Linda Tellington-Jones, the legend. If she does need an introduction to you, you need to go and look up Linda Tellington-Jones. Whether you're into horse welfare from a sport point of view, from just a horse ownership point of view, whether you're into actually effective riding, whether you're into how to be better with your dog, whether you're better with how to be better with your human, Linda has covered all of these in the course of her illustrious career. And she's one of our main mentors. But not just us, she's a mentor to many thousands of people around the world. With good reason. TTouch, Tellington Touch is a thing. If you don't know what it is, go look it up. We will be talking about it, though. Hopefully Linda will be explaining some of it in the course of today's interview. But we're going to be looking really at the idea of where the priorities are first with equine welfare. This is something which we all know is not always there in the equine assisted field, but it's a conversation now that is being had, and things are getting better, things are improving. And once we ask that question, we're going to look at welfare for the humans as well within these programs. So Linda, thanks for coming on. Welcome. And if a listener now is wondering, what is the primary aspect of equine well-being that anybody who is running an equine assisted program should prioritize? What is that thing? Where should we be starting from as ground zero?
I believe, and Rupert, thank you for having me on again. I just love spending time with you just in these discussions, because we're not thinking enough, what does the horse get out of this? And as you know, I think I brought the idea of Liberty Ring riding to Germany at Equitana in 1975, and now it's everywhere in all disciplines, all breeds. And on my 50th anniversary, 50 years from the first Equitana, I was asked, so that you've achieved this goal of people appreciating this freedom that a horse gets when you ride with just a neck ring around them. And what about for the next 20 years? What's your goal? Because I'm almost 90, Rupert. I'm so excited. You can't imagine.
But you don't look a day over 25, so you're doing good.
And it's really important, I believe. My passion, my mission is to really tell people, enhance the understanding that seeing the personality of the horse, acknowledging the individuality of the horse with gratitude. Thank them before you start. And I've been doing this part in assisted therapy, well, since the 80s, when I first was working in Germany, in the 70s actually, to horses who were said to be really sour, the horses that were used in therapy. And all we had to do at the time, I didn't think about just thanking the horse, because I wasn't aware, Rupert, of the force of energy, the function of energy from the quantum physics point of view. That every thought we have, every word we speak, every belief that we have, and every emotion and every feeling is energy. And when we just smile at our horses and thank them, just even if you don't know TTouch, you can start with that. Just put your hand on the horse's neck, or, where I started this before TTouch, just on the forehead of the horse and thank them. And something happens, and I want to tell you this story. About 4 years ago in Germany, in this annual training that I do in the south of Germany, a woman came to me and she said she has 6 ponies that she uses for young children, like 5 and 6-year-olds. And I mean, certainly that's therapy. I mean, it's so amazing for the children at that point. And she said, but her ponies aren't happy. Their ears are back, they're sour, they're not interested, they look depressed. What can I do? And I said, all you have to do when that child comes in is just teach the horse, just to allow them to just touch them on the forehead and thank them. And if they can't reach the forehead, go on the shoulder and just thank the horse. She came back to me the next year at the same training and said that her ponies are now smiling. It's all we have to do. And it's so important that when we're in a place of fear, that's the other thing. And when people, depending what type of therapy you're doing, who isn't in a place of fear, right? Is this a new horse? If they put one hand on the other, over the other on their chest, on their heart chakra, and just imagine that you have a face of a clock, looking at it from the outside, and put one hand over there and very as gently, like with the least contact you can have to move the skin in just a tiny 1 1/4 circle. What that does is bring us from that state of fear under the control of the sympathetic nervous system and activate the parasympathetic. So instead of being controlled by our fight, flight, fear, faint, fool around, amygdala, we activate the forebrain. And the horses feel that. And when we add the smile to it, Rupert, when we add the smile, what happens, we activate our serotonin. And by moving the skin really lightly, what happens is we activate the most oxytocin, what Bruce Lipton is calling the trust hormone. And that's from a 2,000-person study done by the American Massage Association, thinking that they were going to get the most oxytocin from deep tissue work. They got some, but way, way more cortisol. And from the lightest contact with the body, which is what we do with the movement on the horse. It's not massage, it's a message to the intelligence of the cells, that amazing cellular consciousness that knows how to, every cell in the body knows how to function in the body and knows how to take care of us and our horses in their bodies. So it's just so simple. Just have them do this simple heart hug and smile. And
So for those people who can't see Linda on the other end of their Zoom like I can, I'm just going to describe what she did. She took one hand over the other and she put it over her heart. And so if you're listening, if you're driving, don't do this or pull over, obviously. But if you're listening, why not give it a try? Place one hand over the other, put it over your heart, and then, as Linda said, with a very light pressure, to maybe that moves the skin, even if it's through your sweater.
Oh, yeah.
A circle and a quarter. And see how that makes you feel. And I'm doing it right now, and I'm feeling a pleasurable softness. So I'm now going to add what Linda told me to do. So I'm going to thank Linda, because Linda has mentored me and made my equine and therapeutic practices much better. So I have a lot of gratitude. So here I go. So my hand is over the other hand. Now they're both over my heart. I'm one circle and a quarter. I'm thinking of Linda, thinking about how much I love Linda. I'm thinking about how grateful I am to Linda for all the knowledge and support. Thank you, Linda.
And you know what's so interesting? It just made me think of a situation in Germany many years ago when I had a young woman who she was certainly under 30 in a wheelchair who came to see her Icelandic horse. And she had cancer, and she was in the later stages of cancer, but she wanted to come to see her horse. And so I just had her put her arms up on the horse, and she could reach the chair. She could stand up just with the wheelchair there and with a little help. and take her chest and put it on the horse's rib cage
Mm.
and make the circle and a quarter with that. And, just it was like hugging a horse. And it was, when it actually it brings tears to my eyes. I think of the joy that you get from that.
Mm.
And the reason that we do the 1 1/4, I mean, that came to be intuitively many years ago. And it was, I don't know, we've been doing it at least 10 years when a young man in the autism spectrum came into a weekend for humans for TTouch for self-help. And he said, what you all are talking about here in this 1 1/4 circle is that famous golden or sacred spiral that is the form that is in all of nature. You see it really clearly.
The Fibonacci sequence, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's the same spiral movement that's in our DNA. And so it's not a wonder that we can release pain and fear in ourselves. And that's the thing with the fear. So one of the things as you're approaching, and maybe you've never been with a horse before and you're using, some form of assisted therapy from a distance to begin with, if you are feeling anxious, you can do the heart hug. You can also, another one that we do is doing these 1 1/4 circles on our lips around the mouth, because the mouth is the closest connection to the limbic system, that controls our taste, our smell, all of this. And you just, take your lips just between your thumb and forefinger and just make a little circle and a quarter and go around the lips. And we've had such wonderful experiences with this, with children and adults. And it just makes sense. I mean, look what happens emotionally if something happens and you startle and put your hand over your mouth. That's a common thing to do. Or guys who are lucky who have beards or mustaches, you'll see them a lot just, pulling the mustache. It's a way of self-calming.
Yeah, self-soothing. Yeah.
Self-soothing, yeah.
So I'm doing it now. Rubbing my beard.
Think of the thinker.
Yes, absolutely. It is interesting how the chin and the beard, and I guess what it does is it loosens the jaw, right? And the jaw is where if you clench the jaw, that's also, or if you press your tongue to the top of your mouth and your teeth, those are amygdala things, like they're all stress reactions. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can just calm yourself with that.
But what's interesting is that you started this with gratitude. So
Exactly.
the technique, the physical technique of that rotation around the heart, or these rotations around the mouth, are accompanied, of course, by a feeling of gratitude. Yeah.
And the smile to activate that feel hormone, the serotonin.
Yeah. Okay.
And let's feel it when we do it. But I'm sure I've told you this at one point, but it's just such a passion, this concept of the 1 1/4 circle on chest, which is our heart chakra in the center. So if you imagine putting a clock on the wall like kids used to have in school, and you imagine taking that clock and putting it on your chest. And the reason we're imagining is because imagining activates the right brain. And why is that so important? For our compassion, first of all, for our creativity, for our intuition, and for our feeling, Rupert, because think about it now, we have so lost just the concept of hugging somebody or, reaching out and shaking hands thanks to COVID. I mean, people are I still have doctors either touch, fist to fist or elbow to elbow in the fear.
Yeah.
And so we imagine the face of the clock, and on this reason we do a clock, you put the numbers 6 toward the ground, 9 toward the right shoulder, 12 toward the chin, 3 toward the left shoulder. Why do I say it? Because it's obvious. Because it's a method. And methods and numbers activate the very important logical left brain. And we couldn't be here on this podcast if we didn't have an active left brain. So this is why when you make this 1 1/4 circle on your anywhere on your body or on your horse, of course, that's the next thing in order to make a cell-to-cell connection with your horse. It's something that you could do. And it's so exciting because what happens is people become more flexible when they do this.
Mm. It's interesting that, you're talking about activating the right brain first and then the left brain. So by right brain with the active self-compassion, and then the face of the clock brings in the left brain, and then you've got both hemispheres available. And that's coherence. Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense.
And so every time you do these circles, in the circle is like a homeopathic knowing of this clock and the 1 1/4 spiral. And of course, just the 1 1/4 activates the left brain. It's a number. And again, it's a method. But then this concept of movement. So what activates the right brain? Daydreaming, imagination, movement. Of course, what you have in all of your therapy, movement of the child on the person on the horse with you, and color and music, art.
Well, you just talked about color, music, and art. Now, this you also do not see a lot of in equine assisted or equine things, period. And what's so interesting to me about that is your average arena, as we know, particularly your average indoor arena, looks like an industrial building and often is an industrial building. Maybe it's got some nice wooden kickboards, but that's about it. They're often very sterile. Outdoor arenas can be nicer because you've obviously got the landscape, visible. But when you look at old pictures of people in arenas, there's some on the wall behind me where I'm sitting. If I look at them, what you see is they're actually those ones have a little bit of a landscape behind them, but you often see like Grecian pillars or art and drapery and that sort of thing, like the sort of stuff that artists routinely put into their pictures. But those old riding halls had that stuff. They were aesthetically very, very beautiful places to be. And someone might say, well, I can't afford to have fancy stuff. But any indoor arena is de facto expensive, but they're usually pretty ugly. Now we're so busy looking at the horse, which is an object of beauty, a being of beauty, that of course we're enamored of that moving aesthetic. So we could say, well, that's the art. But I don't believe that's enough. And so it's interesting that you've brought that up. And so I'm a great believer in bringing art, plants, trees, nature, all sorts of things into riding arenas. When you go to see an equestrian show, that's kind of what you see, don't you? Or it's darkened and there's a spotlight. So talk to us about why art and music and color came into your mind when you were talking about the therapeutic context with horses, because I think it's not something that necessarily people go intuitively to.
Well, the reason I go to it immediately is I know that this affects this heart hug. We call it a TTouch heart hug. It's 1 1/4 circle on the chest. And the fact is that when we do this and imagining the clock and then imagining the numbers and we activate all this creativity, this feeling, this intuition, and this compassion, it's just, that's where I always go to first. Because most children, unless they have gone through your program, everything is on the left brain. It's all logic. And the problem with logic is this black and white, not having flow, not having choice, not being able to think compassionately or creatively. It's all for us. And I know, and we've seen it in our people who do TTouch on their animals, their horses, their dogs themselves over a period of time, they become more flexible, more willing to listen. And I believe it enhances learning. And what I loved about what I saw with you, Rupert, in Texas, having the different numbers written around the paddock, that gives numbers and if I remember correctly, words that would enhance them. And I was just thinking, from this point of view, how great it would be when if you went to any animal assisted therapy, have horses that had different colored had different color halters on and different colored ropes, and maybe do something fun like have the people before put together some sort of lei, not from flowers because it's too hard, but something with color. Let them imagine putting something that would go around the horse's neck that would be like, like a necklace, like something creative, and then have them pick the horse by the color of that's on the horse. And it would be so much fun. I mean, with your children, riding with them, if they would have some sort of, a cape actually of different colors, and have them choose that cape. What cape who would they like to be?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, that's the kind of thing that we did with, I did this in the 80s, and not the 80s, the 60s, at our Pacific Coast Equestrian Research Farm. We did a 12-week program with a group of young people in their late teens being in an institute to teach them to be able to get along with simple jobs that they could actually function with. And they came to ride once a week. And one of the things that we did, I let them greet the horses and pick a horse that they liked the looks of. So that they would actually look at the horse, because that is one of the toughest things I think in the sport horse world, is that people don't see the horses. And it's so interesting, Rupert, when I was teaching as a citizen diplomat in Russia, one of the things they asked me if I would work with the young people and teenage sport riders. And one of the things they wanted was to give them a sense that the horse was not a bicycle. And it's the same thing in the German Federation. I saw the same thing. How can we get our young riders to see the horse other than a motorcycle or a bicycle? And I think the gift to the horses that you bring, that I've seen you give, not just the horse walking around, but the excitement of sitting in that saddle with you and all of the people who were working with you. And I actually had a chance to do it too. It was such a, you can pretend you're a knight or something else than what you are. And it takes you away. It takes you somewhere else. I mean, it was so incredible.
The whole idea is the imagination, right? So the more things that can spark our imagination, and that's of course why any of us got into horses in the first place, because something sparked in our imagination around them. That of course breeds perspective and resilience, problem solving, the ability to think around problems, the ability to see solutions, not just problems. So I'm a great believer, like you, that the more things that spark the imagination, the more chance there is for these, if you like, cognitive processes to happen. Let's take this now to the physical and the structural. So again, one of the things we often see, those of us who are practitioners, is when a horse comes to us, well, it usually comes to us for a reason. People give away horses because usually they've broken them. It's just a fact. So they'll contact you, or they'll contact me and say, this would make a great therapy horse. What they mean is he's now crocked and he can't do my hard competition job anymore. So I would like to get rid of him. And I'd like you, Mr. Therapy or Miss Therapy provider, to take on the costs of this horse for me for the rest of its life, because I don't want to have to pay for this horse after I've broken it. And not only do I want you to take on all the costs, but I want you to feel grateful for the fact that I'm giving you this amazing horse that I'm just actually chucking effectively in the trash bin. What I often say to that is, yes, and how are you going to contribute to this horse's maintenance? And that's often, greeted either with surprise or sometimes outrage. And it's like, well, dude, if I didn't take this horse, you'd have to pay for its stuff, right? So if you care about this horse, you love this horse, you love this horse so much that you're going to give it up, then surely if you were going to pay for it at home, you wouldn't mind paying a little bit less, to maintain it where it's going to be. That, of course, is a whole other can of worms. But Okay, so the horse arrives and it's got stuff wrong with it. And as we know, that's got usually a leg problem, a back problem, or like a stifle problem. Those are usually the three main ones we'll see. Let's leave the brain out of it for a moment. When you see horses coming in with these issues, talk to us how you would set about the rehab of the horse while it was still included in the program, because a lot of people, they can't take the time out to say, okay, I'm going to take, a year to rehab this horse, and then I'm going to put him in the program, because they're strapped for time, they're strapped for cash. So the horse is going to need to be worked with the clients in a way that is also good for the horse and rehabs it simultaneously. Can you give us your thoughts on that and some technologies and techniques that people can think about? Because everyone's facing this, I think.
Yeah. And the thing is, going back to the thing of people not wanting to pay, many of those sport horses come with insurance and they get a tax deduction if they're going to a nonprofit.
Absolutely.
And it's something that is just a fact of life, and people are going to have to get used to it because we can't afford to take those horses. Now, so you have the horse, however it got there. My first question is the issue that the physical issue the horse is dealing with, putting the horse in other than discomfort, in real pain, so that the respiration and pulse are affected, and you can feel a digital pulse in the hoof. Now, the reason I say that, Rupert, if you had asked me that question in 1975, I would have told you I wouldn't use a horse like that. But I have to tell you a story of why I would consider it. I was invited in Germany after all the present, the show that we put on at Equitana, jumping 4 horses with no bridles. And so I was invited to different places around the country. And I was invited to go on a 3-day ride, cross-country ride, with a woman named Angela Payson. She'd written a book about about wander riding. It was called Wander. Forget in German now what the word is. Anyway. And so we went to meet her, and the idea was that we'd ride about 30 miles a day and then stay in these nice places where horses could be kept in a stable, and we'd be in a hotel. So it was a great idea. So we go there, I had a really nice horse, and she was riding a 19-year-old mare who was bloody dead lame. Seriously lame in the right front. And I was like riding along in shock when we walked out of there. And after about 30 minutes, the lameness got less. And by an hour, she was pretty. You'd notice it if you had a good eye, but she wasn't what I'd call lame anymore. And so we go all day, and about 5 o'clock, the mare starts to go lame again. Short, not like in the morning. So we put the horses away, and I said to her over dinner that night, I just can't believe it. When I have a horse like that, that's the time the quality of life is not okay, and we put the horse down. And she said, look, I have some arthritis in my body also. Do I want to be put down? No, I don't. And she said, I tried turning this mare out when she started to go like this, and she got worse. And she obviously didn't want to be alone. So I started riding her lightly. And you saw what happened today. She walked out of it. So I'm not recommending this, Rupert, for anybody. But today what I say is, check and make sure the horse is not suffering. And by that, I mean the respiration and pulse are in normal range. And there's stuff that you can do to alleviate that. We have so much help nowadays of things. The cheapest help that you can get, and I don't know if you've ever heard this, but they're LifeWave pain patches. And I have seen miracles.
Tell us that product again.
It's called LifeWave.
LifeWave pain patch.
No,
Okay.
LifeWave, W-A-V-E.
LifeWave. Okay.
Yeah. And they have all different kind of patches, pain patches, energy patches. And I have I have put them on people, but the big thing is the most amazing thing, 2 horses I put it on. I want to tell this for your people because it can't hurt. I mean, they claim it's not homeopathy, but I'll tell you, it can't be measured because people were using it in the Olympics in London. People I know ride horses and humans, both actually. And so I had the first time I used it on a horse because I've been putting it on people with real long-standing pain, and you just set the patch on there, and like the pain is gone. And I'm talking an 8 pain. This is like not just discomfort, and it long-standing in some cases. So I was up in Wyoming, and an Arabian mare foundered really badly, and they did some acupuncture. They did have a vet actually visiting that week because it's way out in the country, a long ways in Wyoming, sorry. And so they just put the mare down by the river and left her with food. And like, I'm thinking, they're not going to give this horse any help because in those, mostly today, Rupert, it's still believed that if she would go in the river and get her ice cold feet, it would help her, which I don't know if you've read the studies, but it's the worst thing you can do. If you put a horse in ice, they'll last a couple of months. And every horse I've known in the past that was treated traditionally with ice didn't make it. But a study was done in Iowa. I think it was Iowa State about 30 years ago. And I just happened to read it in Western Horseman, showing that when a horse first, gets the lamini engorged, instead of putting them in ice, you put them in hot water. Hot water you can put your hand in, it's comfortable. Hot and then cool, and hot and cool. And I did it on the Great American Horse Race. I was the international coordinator for the European team. Horses came up really off, and with a light case of founder on the second day out, and 3 other horses had the same condition, so they were pulled, and the other 3 horses were iced and just carried along across the country in trailers. And they were put down after 2 months. When our vet wanted to do that, I told him about this study, and I said, let's see what happens. And we put them in hot and hotter than warm, but not hot.
Like bath water.
Yeah, like bath water, exactly. Yeah. And then cool, not ice, but cooled. Mm-hmm. Just alternating. And I've got to call Dave Nicholson and asked him what the heck. I can't remember. He sent me, I drove like 40 miles to pick up some other medication that he gave the horse a shot. I don't know what it was, but our horse was back on the road in 4 days and crossed the country, finished the race. The other horses, all 3 horses were put down. Now, so I'm telling you this. So I'm really, I've had a lot of horses in my life and seen a lot of cases of laminitis that ended up badly with ice. So the reason I'm telling you this is to help anybody who's doing equine assisted therapy, this concept of the pain patches. So this horse, they put her down by the river, which I'm sorry was really crazy because it was rocky and she had to go over rocks to get in the river. So I go up to see her in the evening after my class ended, and the mare is standing there not eating, respiration was up, her pulse was up, and her food was just standing there, and she was not happy, and she was not standing in the water. And so I put the pain patches on her, bam, and I'm trying to remember why. I don't remember now, but it was a place that I knew from one of our veterinarians. And Rupert, this mare, I put it on within 30, maybe a minute. She picked her head up, walked like 10 feet to the hay, and started eating, and walked down to the river and drank, and came back and ate. That's the first time I did it. I thought, I can't believe it. I mean, I was just stunned. And then the next time, and this is even like, it gives you hope. And these things are not expensive. That's the good news. So the next time was at another horse rescue place in Colorado. And I was watching this 35-year-old warm blood. I mean, 3-legged. His left hind leg, he was so in such pain that he was on his toe. And so I thought, I was with one of my friends who's a vet and also does TTouch, and I said, why don't we just stick these pain patches on this horse, see what happens? Because she hadn't seen them before. And I put them on the inside and the outside of the hock. And this horse trotted off. Rupert trotted off. I mean, isn't that incredible?
With the patches on?
Patches on. I put the patches on. It's about an inch across. And put one on the inside and one on the outside and trotted off.
And how long do they last for, the patches?
Well, they tell you on humans, they say don't leave them on more than 24 hours because it's stuff on it, the stuff that sticks it to your skin, is not good for you. Truth is, I've had people who couldn't afford even the price of the patches, and so they put one in their shoe and could go to work without pain in their feet. So, and I've known people who just put it in their cap and put the cap on.
How do you get the patch to stick on the horsehair?
It just sticks on their dog or horse hair. You don't have to stick.
So I'm looking these up as you're talking about them because I haven't heard of them before. And I've got a horse who has some, who basically the horse that you described from the German lady that walked itself somewhat sound and then would come up. So I have a horse like this, and this horse was given to us. He's superbly talented, and he does exactly this. He walks himself more or less sound. Yep. When you don't do much with him, he gets lamer. If you do long, slow work with him, he gets so sound that he then actually wants to show up for canter work and things like that. You do that for a few days and then you go back to, we manage it. We've managed it for about 10 years. But I think these pain patches might be a good thing. So I'm looking them up to see what's in them. And of course, there's a variety of different ones. And active ingredients, menthol, capsicum, and camphor. But some of them also have turmeric, willow bark, and of course, willow is aspirin, right? Willow is painkiller. So I'm definitely going to check these out.
You see, before...
Capsicum, by the way, is basically hot pepper, right? Chili pepper. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Yeah.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But the thing is, until now I forget, I was a distributor for a long time, but then I just, I didn't need to sell something. And so I just started keeping enough to give them to people. So if they found that one helped, they could order them.
Do you have a particular, I see there's a number of different brands. Do you have a particular brand that you like to?
What do you mean brand?
Well, there's different pain patches here for, I'm looking.
Pain patches, yeah, for different purposes.
For the LifeWave. Okay, so LifeWave is the brand. Okay.
Yeah.
LifeWave, yeah. Oh, I see. Okay, yes. Glucosamine, white willow bark, and turmeric, and MSM, other things. Okay, I'm gonna go give this a try. Now, I know that you're also a strong believer in the Beamer blanket, and
absolutely.
When you tried it on me, when I was riddled with jet lag, I remember thinking, gosh, I can't really feel anything from the blanket, but I seem to be brighter. And then we tried the equine one, and some of our hotter horses became less hot. And which reminds me, actually, I need to start beaming one of my horses, going through a bit of a hot patch right now. And also just some of our older horses were just 15 minutes. Can you talk to us a little bit about the Beamer? And why is it called a Beamer? People think, oh, I'm beaming something, beam me up, Scotty. What is it? How does it work? And why do you recommend this?
It's a PEMF. The reason I recommend it is that I'm almost 90 years old, and I got my first Beamer in 3 in Germany, and it's gone through 3, upgrades over the years. I've had the I've had the latest one. Well, I had the one that you have since 11 years ago. I got it. And then 2 years ago, I got the new Evo. And you see me, I'm riding. I can get down on the floor with a dog. The other day, Rupert, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I can do a leg circle with a horse, and I could get down and work all the way down the legs. I mean, that's like just not possible. And I have no pain in my body. And that's Beamer, because I take it everywhere I go. I'm on it twice a day.
BEMER, that's the name of the Swiss company, right? That makes them.
Yeah.
We're not getting, by the way, listeners, we're not getting sponsorship from this product. I wish we were, but we're not. How does the Beamer work?
Well, it's a pulse electromagnetic frequency. It's a frequency. And what it does, people, we all think, if you haven't studied this, that our heart is responsible for our circulation. But actually, we have like over 78,000 miles of these micro blood vessels in our body. And as we age, or when we have any kind of dysfunction, what happens is the pumping action, it stops it slows down. And it slows like after about, what's the age? I think they say around 40, you start to really slow down. And we don't get the circulation to our extremities, and way slower. So the energy starts to drop, and the blood flow, the circulation, the pumping action of these. And what the Beamer does, just lying on it twice a day, you reactivate this and get the same kind of pumping action and movement, circulation in the body. And life is blood flow. I mean, without this, boy, we just don't have the help that we have. So it's really incredible. The reason I didn't say it first is it's expensive.
Yeah.
Whereas the pain patches aren't. I mean, I was just thinking today, I've got to order the pain patches again because I'm not using them, and I'm going to get the stem cell because they now have stem cells. And what I want to say, as a longtime user for many years before, but I haven't used them for at least 10 years just because I have the Beamer. And I sleep on it, I lie on it. So with the LifeWave patches, what everybody thought before, and certainly what I thought, was that they were homeopathic, but that's not legal. I mean, it's nothing, right? So they have to put something in them, and I'm sure all that sounds really good. They have to put something that's harmless and that is not a drug. Otherwise, these athletes couldn't use them.
So what are they putting in?
What you read.
Yeah.
Herbs.
Okay.
Helpful, harmless herbs.
Okay.
And I am about to order the stem cell patches for me because that...
Tell us about the stem cell patches.
Well, I don't know because I haven't used them. And I just had something that's really pretty new, and it's not... I don't know if I'm in a trial or what, because I just read that they're not fully yet, available. So I had stem cells put into my brain through the nasal passage on the side here. It's really interesting.
Where, why, and how?
And I got ketamine so that the pain was...
Why did you have, and why did you have stem cells put in your nose, and who put them in?
Put in my brain, my doctor.
Right. Okay. Okay. That's a big thing to say. Why? What's the story?
The story is that I've been dealing with Epstein-Barr virus and Hashimoto's, this immune issue.
With the thyroid, yeah.
Yeah, for more than 10 years.
Okay.
Rupert, I'm telling you, there have been, the last couple of years, I haven't been able to ride, except when I go to teach, because then I'm stimulated, and I rode, I think you heard, I rode 5 horses in my last training in Germany last month.
Yeah, I saw the pictures. Nuts, but amazing. Yeah.
And no brain fog. Because this Epstein-Barr, the brain fog is you're just fighting through. It's like you're going through water. I couldn't, unless I was lying down or sitting down. That's what's so interesting. So I decided, I said to my doctor, because I've been having these dreams that I had to get mitochondria help for years it was the oxygen. And then I kept getting these things. No, my mitochondria are having serious problems. I've got to get some help. So I had methylene blue, which is supposed to be a help.
Sorry, tell us the name of that again.
Methylene
blue. Okay.
You can look it up. Yeah, I had an IV shot, but it's supposed to make your brain fog go away.
Yeah. Did not work.
Didn't work. So
Okay.
then, and they're real expensive. And so, well, real expensive. I mean, quite expensive. So then he gave me drops for it. So that's what I'm taking. Then I said, it's not enough. It's not working. I've got to get help from my mitochondria. I don't want to go on like this. And so, like when I sit down and do an interview, or do anything on the computer like this, I'm fine as long as I'm sitting. As soon as I get up, brain fog. And I'm saying this for a lot of people out there who've been dealing with this. So my doctor said, well, there is this new thing of stem cells taken from people between the ages of, I think it's 18 and 40, from belly fat, because fat is a really good source of stem cells. And until now, and I have been wanting to tell you about this anyway, until now, they're available very expensive from umbilical cord. That's the best source that you can get. And they're doing a long study on autism with some really good results at the Stem Cell Institute in Panama. And there's lots on YouTube, and from Neil Reardon, who developed this. So it might be something for you to look into.
Yeah, we'll definitely look at it. And I guess your doctor put stem cells into your brain through your nose.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of the reverse of the Egyptian mummy process where they called your brain out through your nose, right? Mm-hmm. And I presume the point of that is stem cells help to regenerate tissue, right? And other cells. So was the idea that this would help with the brain fog?
Exactly.
And has it?
Since the next morning, not only have I had no brain fog, but I had the energy. I mean, I couldn't stop myself from getting dressed and going to run. And I've been wanting to do this ever since I got home.
What's interesting with you is whenever I meet you, these days we tend to meet in Germany, and you say to me, Rupert, I've got, brain fog. I'm not as young as I was. And then I see you jetting off somewhere else. And I think you're a bit like me, are often jet lagged and traveling all the time. And yet here you are almost 90, thriving, and now riding these young warm bloods again. So there must be something in it. So let's take this then to people like yourself. One of the things that's not really talked about much within equine assisted work, people talk about kids a lot. We work a lot with kids and young adults. People talk about people with trauma, so that might be a more adult population, but people don't really talk about the elderly.
Of the what?
The elderly. Sometimes you'll see someone who's had a stroke or a TBI who's older up on a horse. Generally, the older people you see on horses are people who are just older but ride, and it obviously is therapeutic to that degree. But you don't really see programs aimed at this. And I suppose perhaps that's a risk factor, people falling off or whatever. But we all know that the outside of a horse is good for the inside of a man. We all know the brain, BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, effect of moving and problem-solving, balancing. This must be good. Are you aware of any programs that are specifically targeted for the elderly? And if not, why not?
Well, it's a really good question. And I think probably the insurance and the risk factors. But, Rupert, one of the things that I'm seeing, and I have a friend who has no issues. She's a great therapist. And she decided to do one of these equine assisted therapies where you just be in the presence of a horse. Just sitting in a pasture, actually, and see if the horses come up to you.
Okay.
And it was life-changing for her. And then her husband, who had some fear issues, did it. And for the two of them together, it was amazing, just being in the presence of horses.
Mm.
But riding was not, I'm sure they wouldn't even be interested.
Well, one of the reasons I asked is I actually just recently got contacted by a developer, German developer actually, but he's based out of Hong Kong. And they are creating a retirement community in Chiang Mai in Thailand. And you may know that we have a good horseboy movement method place in Thailand called Farm de Lek. And we must get Gay Pantrat, who runs that place, on this show actually, because she does incredible work. It's also an organic farm, and they do amazing classical horsemanship and everything. They're state of the art, amazing. But this guy contacted me, Sebastian, and said, yeah, look, Rue, we want to do a retirement community based around an equestrian center, not necessarily with the idea that everyone who buys a house in this retirement community would ride, but more because the presence of horses seems to be so therapeutic. Maybe their grandkids want to come and ride. Maybe also people from the local town want to come and ride. And this creates a social life and a social hub in younger people and so on. But, and so we're now working together to look at adapting horseboy movement method, perhaps for an an older population. But it does seem to me also that just in our culture, we are so youth oriented. My father, for example, he's 90. He's very active. So when people see someone who's older, who's very active, there's this kind of, oh, wow, that's amazing. But in general, people past the age of about 75, maybe it's 80 these days because people are living longer, there is a bit of just a kind of writing off. And this seems to me a gap really in our field, and here you are representing the older rider, is this something we should be looking at?
Well, I think Thailand would be a good place. The problem in our country, so many people are overweight. You'd have to have, which isn't a problem. I mean, these warm bloods that, or actually, I don't mean warm bloods, cold bloods.
Yeah.
Make fabulous horses. They're fun. They're so interesting to sit on, and they're really impressive. And all you need is a really great ramp. I mean, you need a tall one for but I mean, I think it would be wonderful and have different sizes of horses, like ponies for the kids, but small horses actually, rather than ponies, because it's so hard to keep a pony happy. People boss them around so much and don't treat them with respect. So they resentful.
Yep.
But I think it's a great idea. And what would be really fun is you could have competitions of having people leading horses through, the kind of stuff that we do, like through play, what we call it. And it so empowers people to be able to just be in the presence of that horse and to be able to do something together with them.
I think this is something maybe we should start exploring. Maybe you and I should have a chat with this guy. Maybe I should bring you in on the project. Let's do that. I'm talking to him tomorrow, actually. Okay, let's go back to the structural side of things with the horse. The two other areas that you generally see a lot of problems with the horses that get donated for therapy: backs. Of course, the back is a big thing because there's many parts of the back, and stifle. You definitely see lots of problems through that. Somebody gets a horse, lovely character, has problems there. Talk to us about your first approaches. What would you be looking at?
Well, the question is, what are you using for saddles? Because this is a thing that I find with so many horses. And you saw the pictures of Leo in that one. It's called a German warm blood, but the mare has a head like an Arab, really sensitive horse. And she was brought to this clinic because she's an event horse. And the rider said she's slow, has, no impulsion, and she doesn't like me. Interesting. So I asked her how she rode her, and she rode her, in the hand, like really collected all the time, pushing her forward with the spurs. And it was really interesting because what I did was, just first I took a bit out of her rope and put the Lindell on so that she could ride her right away with that, and just let her move and take the spurs off and let the horse move. And it was such a difference we saw in the videos. And then the next day, what we did was, anyway, it doesn't matter. This doesn't answer your question. Because with back problems, this is where the Beamer is really great. And, I've never used the pain patches on the back. I mean, what we do is work on the body, but come on. You have to have somebody who wants to do that. The thing that's so often done that I've worked on horses, Olympic level horses that have had all kinds of back injections and stuff. Never did a bit of good. Until you, did today I'd use a Beamer.
Yeah.
Or use TTouch.
Yeah, I would say both are good. And those listeners who have not explored TTouch, I really would recommend you do, because since knowing you, Linda, we use it all the time. And it really helps. One of the things we do to help with backs and stifles and that, so we do a lot of long reining. And of course we do that as part of often the session. Maybe the client is long reining the horse. That's an interesting thing too. Maybe someone's being long reined on the horse. And we find we can build a lot of strength and flexibility here, and also the in-hand work. And we can incorporate this into client sessions so that it's not like we're having a time conflict, where, oh gosh, we've got to find this time to long rein the horse and work the horse in between clients, because that time doesn't exist. We have to do it there we have to work the horse therapeutically as we're serving the client. But when you say TTouch, when you're using TTouch on the back, let's say it's for something like thoracic kissing spine, standard thing that, say, a donated show jumper might have. Can you talk to us about the specific TTouches that you would use in that thoracic area? And then we'll go down the back looking at other ones.
Well, I'll tell you, I have a really good case of it, actually, because I worked on a horse named Demarath, a Canadian horse on the jumping team. And they were in Ireland, and his rider came out to the stall in the morning, and this was before they kept guards on their horses, and the horse was completely crippled. It was unbelievable. They have no idea what they did to this horse, but he was so sore in the back, and he wound up diagnosed with kissing spine. And this is like overnight. Literally, not the kissing spine. So when I think about that, I wonder what is going on. Anyway, this was a friend of my family's. And so I went and worked with the horse for a week. And after 1 week of work, and I'll tell you the stuff that I did with him, his vet came in, and I was riding at the time, and the vet did not recognize the horse. And because his movement was so different, and his pain in the back was fine. And it's just, I was doing the belly lift and the circles on the back, and in the riding, allowing the horse to move, in a different way. And this thing of riding the horses with the Liberty rings, as Ileana's doing so much with, it allows the horses to go down and stretch their backs when they want to. And that's the thing that can make so much difference. And this lick of the cow's tongue. And I believe now, with this new, are you following all this new studies of fascia in horses?
Yes, but there's a question I've got from something that you said earlier. So just go on, and then I'm going to dial back in a moment.
And what I'm realizing, what we're really affecting is the fascia and also the nuchal ligament, because
the which ligament?
The nuchal ligament.
The one over the where the skull meets the spine.
Exactly. Yeah. Rupert, last month I found, I think it was on Instagram, a veterinarian showing, I'm pretty sure she was there, but I can't find it. It showed the skeleton of a horse and the ligament attached and showed what's happening to the stretching of that ligament when the horses are overbent and really over periods of time. Plus, what she wasn't talking about is what's happening when they're ridden in this extreme collection over time, what happens to the fascia, and that it actually stiffens. And that's the other thing that's out there now. I mean, this is all like really new information, new ways of seeing things. And that's why, like, allowing the horse to stretch and move at times, not always, not behind the vertical, makes a huge, huge difference.
And so for example, this is so true in competition riding, but it's also true, I think, in therapeutic riding, is people aren't trail riding their horses in between. So of course, if you trail ride your horse on a loose rein, what's he going to do? He's going to stretch, he's going to look around, he's going to prick his ears up and look at something in the distance, he's going to sniff something on the ground. Yeah. You're going to allow all that because you're just trail riding. Of course, if you never trail ride the horse or hand walk the horse out in a halter, say, when is the horse going to get a chance to do that? You say, well, maybe in the field, but as we know, a lot of horses are still living in boxes,
Field.
So, okay, you said something about the lick of the cow's tongue.
Right.
Helping with this thoreg area. Tell us, what is that?
So you start just behind the elbow on the midline of the horse and take your flat hand and slide the hand up and then turn the hand so the fingers are pointed now upward over the top of the spine. Yeah. So you start underneath, fall muscle.
Starting under the belly.
Under the belly, right on the midline under the belly. Right.
So you're stroking from front to back or back?
Yes, you're stroking from underneath. You come up, just up to the ribs and then turn your hand and stroke up. And
so this would be like along the line of the girth to the saddle area.
That's right. And then you go like 4 inches and do it, and you work all the way back.
All the way down the belly, almost like you're painting the horse with your palm from the
belly
under to the top.
Other side of the back.
Okay, so you then go over the spine to the other side of the back with your hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just connecting to the spine. And then you just every hand width back to the flank.
Okay. Tell us what this does.
What it does, if you've got a horse who's spooky or sensitive, you do it really lightly so that you show them that that they're sensitive. And so instead of desensitizing them so that you put them through something that they just stand there and hold their breath, you get them to the point that they're comfortable with it and accept it. And then I've seen it on horses who are stiff, for instance, or horses that are maybe worked hard, or just now what I understand is happening is that the fascia is hardened. Because that can happen in these. When you're going to be so excited when I'll find upon the YouTube, because I've looked at lots of them, and there's one that really shows the history of it, and then what's happening in these cases where there's lack of movement, because the fascia, they're like elastic spider webs through all the muscle from the body, and so when the horse just stands so much, and they're not worked, it's really interesting. They harden.
Yes, I think this is the same in people too. Yeah,
totally.
Sedentary lifestyle. Yeah, hardens up the fascia.
Yeah, and that's what's happening when people sit at the computers all the time or look down at their phone, stretching that fascia, and also, of course, that ligament. So it's really interesting.
Okay.
Thank God for Beamer is all I can say for me.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so Beamer's the lick of the cow's tongue, the circle and a quarter movements down the horse's spine. Let's go to the stifle, because I think this is an area that a lot of people don't really look at. And you know how it is. Once you start looking at horses' stifles, you can never ever see a sound horse again. And, so to my mind, whenever I'm looking at a horse, they're never sound. They've always got something. And my question is always, can I work with that something, or how will I work with that something? Just like me. I mean, if you look at me walking, I'm not sound, but I can go on a long distance walking trip but you're going to have to work with me a little bit. So talk to us about stifles. Talk to us about the approach there.
So this is where I see the body differently and unique about TTouch. How I started to see this is that I'm totally aware as I'm touching that body that when there's ideal function in the body, there's communication between the cells. With pain or discomfort or fear, stiffness, dysfunction, then the communication between the cells is inhibited, and the body's absolute ability to take care of itself doesn't happen because of the inhibition of pain or fear or lack of or fear of pain even in the horse. So this is where our TTouches really come in with the concept. And this is, Rupert, different since I last saw you. I finally got a different understanding of why we can release fear and pain in ourselves or in other people or in our animals with this 1 1/4 circle. And should I tell you the story? Is this getting too far off?
No, please.
Okay. So, I mean, all these years we've been able to help people, kids, they've got a bang, they fall down and hit a rock with their knee. And years ago, I hear this story from one of our longtime teachers of the work, when her son was like 6 or 7, he fell down and she was going to kiss his knee, right? He said, "No, Mama, TTouch it." Raised on TTouch. And this is what many of our people who've been teachers and teaching kids in the classroom.
Yeah.
And pain, just put the fingers on and move the fingers in 1 1/4 circle, and you will reduce that pain or the fear in your body. And we've seen this for years. I mean, this is just amazing. So how have I changed my realization now? Oh my gosh. All these years I kept asking, what is the reason we can reduce this fear and pain? And I'm going to show you one book that is just, first of all, how I got started on this whole concept of cellular wisdom, of cellular intelligence, was one book that I've got here sitting at the far end of my table, actually. It's called Man on His Nature, and it's Sir Charles Sherrington. And Sherrington won a Nobel.
Man on His Nature, Sir Charles Sherrington.
Yeah, and it's the only non-scientific book that he wrote. He's written many, many books. He won a Nobel Prize. And in this book, I can't find it, I got the definite impression. I know I was sitting in Morvenbach restaurant in Stuttgart, Germany in February of 1976 when I read whatever it was that inspired me to realize that he said, look, if you cut yourself, think about it. The body, the cells know how to send healing, whatever it takes to heal that. And so I sat up and I thought, holy mackerel, wait a minute. When I don't yet know how to do miracles of change in the physical structure of a human, like I had seen Moshe Feldenkrais do in our training at the Humanistic Psychology Institute the summer before, I thought, all I have to do is say, cells, just touch this body and remind these cells of their potential for ideal function. And that's how I started looking at the body, instead of looking at it from the Feldenkrais concept of the nervous system. I started looking at it from the cellular intelligence through the whole body. And so that's what's behind all the stuff that I do. But then 2-3 years ago, wisdom. And the reason...
The Code of Authentic Living, Cellular Wisdom.
And the first chapter, the first sentence in the first chapter begins with, every cell is a genius. This is the same thing, that Sherrington said all those years before, that had actually set up my whole life and the work I do with people and animals and myself. And so what enhanced this and what changed me, what made me realize this, wait a minute, where did I put this? I had this yesterday. Anyway, it's on the back of this book. I'm going to tell you this because it changed my life. This back of this book. So, and the reason it's important, this author for 20 years taught cell biology at Tufts University of Medicine. And she wrote that here is one legend of how wisdom came to be hidden from all humans. Upon rubbing up against the legend, Joan C. King asked herself, what if in all my academic studies of cells, I've missed the deeper truth of what I'm really seeking? It was that question that led Joan beyond the academic search for the wisdom embedded in our very cells to the discovery of cellular wisdom and the journey within. According to an old Hindu legend, there was once upon a time when all human beings were gods, but they so abused their divinity that Brahma, the chief god, decided to take it away from them and hide it where it could never be found. Where to hide their divinity was the question. So Brahma called a council of the gods to help him decide. Let's bury it deep in the earth, said the gods, and Brahma answered, no, that will not do because humans will dig into the earth and find it. I'm having a little trouble because the light isn't on and the light not so good here. So anyway, then another one said, okay, I know what we'll do. We'll drop it in the deepest part of the ocean. No, they'll find it. Another said, we'll go to the deepest cave on the planet and dig deeper and leave it there. No, humans are very intelligent. They will find it. So he thought long and hard and finally said, I know where we'll hide it, and they'll never find it. We'll hide it within. And so the legend goes, people have been running up and down the mountains, digging in the dirt, going in the deep part of the ocean, always looking for what's inside. And that just so connected with me, Rupert, because of what I learned, all those years ago in 1976 from Sir Charles Sherrington, this Nobel Prize recipient. And so what I see now, when we put our fingers on the body and realize that every cell in this hand, every cell in my body knows its function in the body and communicates, according to Dr. Bruce Lipton. So what he writes in there is one chapter on the development of the cells and how cells communicate, and you can prove it in the Petri dish. Like they can live alone for about 2 weeks, a single cell, but after that they die because they need this communication. And the premise of the book is that if we humans would recognize our necessity for connection and communication, we could be in peace. It's so interesting. And so when I read this book, The Code of Authentic Living Cellular Wisdom, I started thinking, come on, my Christian friends will not care what a Hindu says. It must be somewhere in the Bible. And I have a friend whose husband is a Bible studier. And so I called him and he said, if it's in the King James Version of the Bible, it's something to the effect that God is within and all around us. And it's the same, actually, I have other friends, Jewish friends, who say the same kind of wisdom is in our religion also. It's in the teachings. So it's everywhere. And so Rupert, when I put my fingers on my own skin now, and I gently move the skin, because it's not going over it. You move the skin in this basic Fibonacci spiral circle in a certain tempo, then it's like taking a key and turning a lock that opens to enter a door into this phenomenal divine wisdom in every cell in our body. And, it's so interesting because in a book called Uncommon Prayer by Ruth Miller, there's one page that says that in between the stuff that makes up the universe, this is the whole book on quantum science, actually. In between the stuff that makes up the universe is not just empty space. Holding it all together is a wonderful, rich quantum field. Many scientists call this consciousness or intelligence, and the rest of the world calls it God, or, from my point of view, source, divine spirit, all it is, whatever universal knowing. And I just realized this is why when I recognize this in my horse, I'm working on this horse that has a back issue. And I'm not seeing the issue. This is the important part about understanding energy. If I focus on the problem, I'm not going to get this recognition of this intelligence that I'm putting my hands on, this amazing wonder that we are. And that's all I have to do is recognize it. And working with people who have disabilities, I know that you do this. I mean, kids or people on the autism spectrum, when I look at them, I see that divine wisdom in every cell in the body. And when I am with them, just like when you all thinking in this way or with these people, they feel themselves in a different way. It's a gift. Or when we look at that horse that has a problem, that's there to help us, and we see their beauty, no matter what they look like, something different happens. That's what excites me about what you're doing, because you know what happens beyond what we see.
I do. What's interesting, I think, it's not, this is just as you say, okay, intelligence that's within each cell. That's got to be because they function so well, right? And when you look at the therapeutic world, with the best of intentions, what we talk about, we use the words like disorder, disease, even though they may not be disorders at all. But that's the vocabulary that we get given, and then we start using it. And then there's always a point, I think, where all of us as practitioners go, hold on, this isn't disorder. This is just a personality type. This is a way of being. This is a, okay, it comes with some challenges, but show me something that doesn't. Let's work towards what you would call, what you just called, optimal. What to me is always the issue is not the condition. So let's say the person has autism. Well, when I was first wondering what to do with my son, I looked for an autistic mentor and found one, Dr. Temple Grandin, who was very autistic and much more economically successful than many other people I knew. And I thought, oh, this is great because you can be like that and do fine. So therefore, the problem cannot be autism. And then I began to work with, other conditions. And again, frequently I would meet people who had these conditions who were actually leading great lives. So that it would not despite the condition, often perhaps because of it in certain ways. So more and more, and then I started looking at physical disabilities. There's that word again. And I realized that no. The problem is the suffering that is associated with some of the challenges that these things can have. But the problem is literally that suffering. So what is the opposite of suffering? Joy. Where do you see joy on the equine training scale? You don't see it. Where do you see joy in the therapeutic literature for therapeutic riding? Or you don't see it. Where do you see joy in, how to tackle autism or how to tackle PTSD? You don't see it. But the opposite of suffering has to be joy. So it seems to me that what you're talking about here is, obviously we associate joy as an emotional state, but how can you have that emotional state if you don't have it as a physical state?
Simple.
So go ahead.
Gratitude.
Okay, gratitude. Talk to us about the connection, please, between gratitude, joy, and physical, optimal, cellular health.
In horses, what I look for now is how can I get the sparkle in their eyes?
Yeah.
How can I get them so they're interested, they're curious, they're appreciative of what we're doing, they're enjoying whatever I'm doing together.
Even a bit of devilry, but devilry that's working with you, not against you. Yeah, sure.
I have to tell you this. I saw the most amazing, and they promised me to send me this photo because somebody caught it on film. We wouldn't have known it otherwise. This horse in Italy last week. I sent you a picture of that big gray I was sitting on.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures of me riding him, but he came. This is a beautiful rehab center with vets who are both our teachers. I mean, TTouch Tellington Method teachers. And so they took this horse in rehab because he was having a constant tendon problem. And his owner really loves this horse and knew that he would never recover to be a Grand Prix, and that's all she's interested in is Grand Prix jumpers. So the horse was given to Massimo Duray and Sylvia Carasani, his wife, and their daughter, who's 16. So when I got there, and the problem with the horse, he's a big horse. He grew fast. He's heavy muscled, and he didn't want to go forward, and he had a tendency to what people call bucking, but kicking up. Going into the canter when you stick a spur in him. Get canter. You know how horses.
Yeah.
So it really scared his rider, because she's used to pony. She's just graduated to horses, maybe a year and a half ago. So I worked with him, and he had no feeling in his body when you would check to see his sensitivity. It's like he didn't feel himself. It was really interesting. So we then rode him in the Lindau, got the bit out of his mouth, and did some work on his body. This is where we did tarantulas, which is this movement. You just take your, I'm holding my arm up and I'm doing a movement, forefinger, middle finger, forefinger, middle finger.
Like a spider walking up your...
Yes, the two-legged.
The two-legged spider, okay.
We actually call this tarantulas pulling the cow because I love tarantulas. Two-legged tarantula, and the little feet go along about, 1.5 inches apart and make an indentation so that you can feel little feet. And that activates the neural impulses. And we calm them with the plow, the thumb dragging along.
So the two fingers are walking. I'm just describing what I'm seeing here to the viewers. Linda's walking her middle finger, her index finger along her arm, but she's dragging the heel of her. She's dragging her thumb along behind.
Pretending
the tarantula's pulling the plow. Yeah, okay, got it. Yeah, does feel nice. Yeah.
And the thing is, it comes from the concept of tuaka, or skin rolling.
Okay.
And that was something that the Mongols did over the knees. They rolled the skin of their warriors over. It said, this is a legend. I don't know if it's true, but that's what one of the centers I went to says, in order to release the fear of death. So it's an organization.
Where did you hear that story? Sorry, that Mongol.
In London.
To release the fear of death. That's so interesting.
Yeah, called tuaka.
Tuaka. Okay, I'm looking it up. Please keep going.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, this is 40 years ago. But so what happened when I maybe I read that somewhere first. So I got the name of this organization. I was in Germany at the time when I read it, and I flew to London and I had a session. Rupert, I am ticked off to this day that I paid them for the pain they put me through. Broke it off in the middle because they wanted to lift the skin away from the fascia on your chest because they said that will release any unwanted emotions you have. Yeah. It released my kill emotions, and you'd want to have that. It was terrible. It was so painful. Anyway, so, but I was really influenced by this concept of the Mongols. They obviously knew what they were doing. So I started experimenting with it on myself. And instead of trying to tear the skin away from the fascia, I just rolled wherever it was easy to pick up the skin, or just made a little furrow. And I realized today, looking at the things I'm now studying about fascia, how interesting that is, because that must have an effect on the fascia. And if you do it in a way that is kind and not painful, I believe there's something different happens. Because I think when we create pain, it doesn't make sense to me to traumatize ourselves.
No, I agree. You know, I think we need you as a standard textbook consultant within the field. You know, as the field of equine assisted stuff, it's starting to come so much into the mainstream now that people are looking to regulate it. And in some ways that's good, and in some ways that's not good, as always, right? And but it's happening. So there it is. And you could argue that, you know, that was what Germany did very early on with the curatorium for therapeutic riding that operates there sort of as a wing of the government. But
And Rupert, I just want to interrupt you a moment.
yeah.
You know, I started working with the therapeutic riding in Switzerland. It was the biggest one in Europe at the time. It had to be 1976 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that got me, they weren't paying attention to the emotional health of the horse or physical. The horses were really, well, you know what you're doing? Look at that is, do this. Add to what you're doing, Rupert. Make a circle and then hold the skin so it doesn't push up and stretch it.
Okay. Linda just saw that on the Zoom that I was stretching the skin of my forehead.
Yeah.
Some self-soothing thing. Okay.
And you'll stretch it a little more if one hand hold, like circle with
Holds
your
the
right.
eyebrow.
Yeah, and then hold and then slide up. And it's really, I mean, if you do it on one side of the face and then look in the mirror, you won't believe it.
Okay.
And I think we're affecting the fascia in a way that is really wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm doing this now and it does feel good. I'm holding my finger sort of along the eyebrow, and then I'm running the other fingers of the other hand up and giving my skin a stretch. But let's go back to this place in Switzerland while I do this.
So I was teaching them TTouch for their horses to, you know, for just keep their back supple and less pain. Not that not every horse has pain, but you know, I did. How many people are without pain in the back?
Indeed.
I mean, that's the truth of it. So we can do something about it. So anyway, I worked with them a lot. And that's when I remember really being so aware, regulated or not. Man, Rupert, there were a lot of horses in a state of what I will call discomfort.
Yeah.
And not recognized. And when I can remember, I wish I remember her name. I remember with an Arab mare that was just lovely. She was so unhappy. She was just used. And all she had to do was start thanking her for what they're doing. And the mare changed. This is where we have to give gratitude and count our blessings. And just thank the horse. So all you have to do is thank the horse.
You know, what's interesting with this is we talked about suffering. So we want to alleviate suffering. Okay, that's our job. Suffering, the opposite of suffering, is what we must be therefore going towards. That must be therefore joy, which is not in any of the literature that has been given to you. And then what is the secret of joy, of course, but gratitude. Law of attraction, you know.
Yep.
If you are grateful for things, then you turn your attention to those things. So more of those things tend to come into your life, obviously. And I think that people do feel that they thank their horses. I mean, people, good boy, you know, pat the horse. And you know, people say you shouldn't pat your horse, but I don't know about that, because I think anything that's you hear people say opinions about everything, right? And you know, God knows why. But there'll probably be someone listening to this say, "Oh yes, I'll tell you why it's so bad." But if it's an emotional expression of gratitude, if somebody pats me on the back, I might perhaps prefer to have a massage or a TTouch. But I absolutely accept the pat on the back as it makes me feel joyful, because they're communicating joy and their gratitude. So we're communicating an emotion. that's positive. Okay. So I think people do feel that they do this, and they scratch on their horses and love on their horses and give their horses treats and, pull on their ears if the horse likes that, pull on the tail if the horse likes that. I think a lot of people really do this. However, I think in institutional settings, there often isn't the time for this. And when people are coming, clients are coming, and there's this perception, well, you're coming for this hour or whatever of sport or therapy or instruction. So this hour is got to be filled with the service. And it's not perceived as a service, as part of the service, to teach this gratitude. But it's so interesting that you say this, because what I frequently do, if I can tell someone's in a bit of a not so great mood when they come in just for a regular riding lesson with me, is I have them do a ride of appreciation. So for the first time, I say, hey, look, I can tell you're a bit stressed. Let's, for 4 minutes, just ride around the track of the arena, noticing anything that you're grateful for. And it doesn't even have to be to do with your horse, right? It could just be the way the light's coming in through the window, or the landscape that you can see beyond the window, or it could be the horse, or it could be something about the way the light hits the mane, or it could be the horse itself. But let's think, I'll usually say, let's think of 5 things that we're grateful for in this moment that may be to do with what the horse or what's happening here, or could be something else. And I usually will lead. I say, I'll start, I'm grateful. And usually what I'll say is, I'm grateful for the fact that you are here riding with me, because thank you for trusting me. And I'm grateful for the fact that I live with horses. This is wonderful. It's an amazing thing. It was always my dream as a kid to have this equestrian life. And now here I live it. And And of course I remind myself to do this. But do I do it every time? No. And I think I do more and more now, at least in my head. And do I communicate this to my horses all the time? I think I try to now, but I think you drawing our attention to this, where it's really helpful, is in an institutional setting where you are actually really trying to serve this person or this horse really well. I think it's a forgotten thing or an overlooked thing to say, well, part of that service is to engender emotional well-being. And here is a tool. So why don't we set aside a certain amount of time of this session to engender this well-being? Here's a tool. It's called gratitude. I think that's a very powerful statement that you made.
Well, I think, you see, the thing is, when it becomes institutionalized, I think this is where it's really important to add in this concept of releasing fear at the cellular level. And this is what we found that we can do with the 1 1/4 circles. And how you can prove it is with the heart math M-wave, because it puts us in the parasympathetic state of heart coherence, and it is the highest state for learning. So in terms of Horseboy World and the education program, it's Candace Burt, and she was just quoted in a podcast I saw yesterday on, I think I was listening to a stem cell podcast and her work, because that's where I got the idea when I realized that why TTouch works to release fear at the cellular level. And then Rupert, do you know of her book? She proved her book, The Molecules of Emotion by Dr. Candace Pert, P-E-R-T.
How do you spell Pert?
P-E-R-T.
Pert, Dr. Candace Pert, The Molecules or the Molecule of Emotion?
Molecules of Emotion.
Molecules of Emotion. I don't know this book. I will go and look at it.
The thing that's significant about it, her work, of course, her professor was one of the Nobel Prize nominations. Didn't receive it, but it was one of the possibilities, because what she proved is that our cells hold our emotions, and that through these chemical connections to the brain, we think it's in our head, And that's why you can talk all you want, but that's why I know that with these light T-touches that do not activate fear because of discomfort or pain, that we can release fear.
Yeah.
And what's important for you in your program, I was going to grab my pod. I just did a webinar on it last week, but HeartMath Institute sells these little things. It's called an M-Wave, EMWAVE. And it's a handheld computer you clip through your ear. And when you go into heart coherence in the state of the parasympathetic nervous system state, it has a little song, a tune, a different tune and different color. And when you're riding a horse, when you go in that state, which you can get in yourself from gratitude and singing, humming, singing and movement. So like if you had a kid, who has the ability to move, putting a soft stick in their hand and have them direct the horse from above, play and make these big movements with this, or calling in the angels or the horse angels around and having them move up there. It's amazing what happens. And if you can get them to do this, Rupert, making the movement with the stick and the infinity sign, wow, that's a whole other way to put us in this parasympathetic state. Do you know the infinity?
I do know the infinity sign, and I do it with my fingers on myself in any areas I have stiffness or pain.
Oh, cool.
And yes, it works, but I haven't actually been doing it on the horses very much. I do all sorts of spider fingery, caressy things as I ride them and so on as I work them. But I haven't actually been doing the infinity singlet. I should, yeah.
Well, I learned it because in 1972, I was one of 40 people who were measured for the activation of left and right hemispheres by Russell Tark, the director of the Stanford Research Institute. We were in a weekend workshop with Robert Monroe. And
who's Robert Monroe?
He's the Robert Monroe Institute. Just write it down.
Oh, the Monroe Institute, yes.
That was before there was an institute. And he was at Esalen Institute where he was doing a workshop. And I was one of the people in the workshop. And Russell Tark.
By the way, just for people listening, the Monroe Institute is the center, education center. It's probably the world's leading center for study of human consciousness. Okay, yeah. Monroe Institute. Okay, so just go on.
Yeah, that's important to say. And so everybody in that class it was an invitational thing, was being measured by Russell Tark. And he said that I had the closest to a 50-50 use of left and right hemispheres, which I couldn't believe because I didn't think I was a very logical person. So after I left that weekend, I got the book Drawing from the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. And she had all of these exercises of writing in the air, writing your name in the air with your right hand and writing it backwards with right and left hand and doing just infinity and just, going out to the outer edges of the universe and coming around the outside, imagining coming, of course, up through the center of the earth and up to the body and then going the other way. And I did it for months and it really made a difference. But the thing is that we can measure with the M-Wave. You know HeartMath Institute.
I do, and I was going to actually ask you to elucidate a bit more about HeartMath because not everybody listening to this does know about HeartMath. So just get through what you're saying there, and I'm going to ask you to talk to us in more detail about HeartMath, please.
And so anyway, I've been so interested in this right and left hemispheres, and I think it's so important to be on the earth at this time, having the logic of the left brain without having the judgment of right and wrong, black and white. And that's what the right brain does to us with movement, color, art, all imagining. So the more you can do wearing these great capes and choosing your cape and then making these movements. What I did with some kids that I worked with at the Jugend Farm in Stuttgart many, many years ago was having them take like a stick, a riding whip, Actually, I don't think I gave them, I think I gave them a stick. I didn't want them to have a whip and have these hyperactive kids being the circus directors and standing in the middle of the ring with me, telling the kids who are leading the horses what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I don't have to tell you, but I think it's as much pleasure for us as it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I live vicariously my childhood over again every day. When I'm working with the kids, it's like, this is the childhood I wish I'd had. And, here we go. I can have it with you.
Yeah. And doing like the NLP stuff with a kid. I remember another little girl at the Yugen farmer was coming for therapy in the afternoon with her bone. And she could never stay still. And so she was skipping a lot. So I just skipped with her into the ring and then said, you have to be really quiet so the horses will listen to it. And of course, as soon as you do that, they start following you.
Mm-hmm.
Right them out,
Play, what you're talking about there. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor, that is neuroplasticity, that is neurogenesis. That's what we're all looking for, comes through play. Obviously, riding a horse or being with a horse, if we are approaching it in a joyful manner, is automatically play. It's automatically going to be good for our brains. Tell us, though, you've mentioned heart math, and obviously I think anyone in our field ought to be aware of it, but it's not necessarily as common knowledge as it should be, despite the fact that, they now help to advise the G7 summit. And talk to us about heart math. How did you come across them, and where do you think they're helpful?
Well, I came across them first it was 1998 or 99, and I signed up for a weekend, which they were doing, just because of a friend of mine had gone to it, and it made such a difference to him in this concept of activating both hemispheres. And I was, of course, already interested in that since, the 72. And so as it turned out, I wasn't able to go to that workshop, but over the years, we've had a lot of connections with them. And they sent a doctor to us who was new on the staff and sent it to us in Hawaii because they knew what TTouch can do to release fear. And in cases of like, what do you call it? Earthquakes and
Natural disasters.
And that's what they do with their heart math. They do it with a form of breathing, and they measure that and then put you out of the state of fear into the parasympathetic state with this M-wave. And I recommend just go online, all of you listening to this, and they have free, wonderful, many, many weekends. I think almost every weekend there's some incredible person from around the world, visionary, giving a free talk.
Absolutely. There's a person I work with quite closely now called Kansas Carradine, who works a lot with heart math, and she brings this into every aspect of horsemanship, with trying to looking through the lens of the heart, showing people how to do that and why is that physically good for you as well as mentally and emotionally good for you. There was a really interesting study which she turned me on to from University of Kassel here in Germany, that's quite a big deal, University Kassel. Way back in the 90s, that was measuring the emission of photons, light particles, from the human heart when people were consciously thinking loving thoughts, and how far out those photons were going. So therefore we can absolutely project love and what is joy but love, that these things were actually being measured by quite hard-nosed German universities 30 years ago. It's so interesting how these things are not more common knowledge. And so she turned me on to this study just about 10 days ago, and I'd never heard of it. So I thought, gosh, is that legit? So I went and looked it up and found the study, and yep, there we go. Knocked me down with a feather. There it is. And heart math, I remember you were the first person to talk to me about heart math. And we had been wondering in Horseboy Method why what we call the sensory work, when you're lying body to body on a horse that's static. Why does this work so well? Why does this regulate the nervous system so well? Why does this bring people into a state of joy and bliss, the horse too? Why does this work? And you, I think, the first person to point out, Aru, you should look at the heart math thing. What's going on here is you're effectively plugging your small human heart into the mains of this huge horse heart, and the electromagnetic field that's coming through that is coming into your heart, and that's bringing heart coherence, and this is impacting you positively on every single level. But you were the first person to point that out to us. Yeah.
I'm so glad it's such, I think it's one of the most important institutions on the planet from the work that they have done.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And one thing I wanted to add to what would be your listeners could do for those who are doing assisted therapy from the ground, and a lot of people do it. We found that just put your one hand on the chest of a horse and the other hand on the withers, on the ones you can reach.
One hand on the chest of a horse, one hand on the withers. Okay.
And Rupert, I have had letters from people who said it transported them into a total other dimension. Just something happened.
Is this a horse standing still? Is this a horse moving?
No, standing still, just standing there. And what happens, you see, the TTouch is not a massage. It's a message. It's a message to make this connection to this phenomenal scientists now in this book. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called The Song of the Cell.
Song of the Cell.
Yeah. An exploration of medicine and the new human.
An exploration of medicine and the new human, or in the new human?
And the new human.
And the new human.
He's the author of the Pulitzer Prize winner, the emperor of all maladies. And
can you give us the name of the author again?
Yeah, it's F like Sam, IDD, David, HAR, Richard, T, Tom, H, Henry, A, Siddhartha. And the last name is another very long name. It's M like Mary, UKHERJEE. Mukherjee.
Mukherjee.
Yeah.
Siddhartha Mukherjee.
Yeah.
Okay, Indian or Nepali, I presume.
And one of the things that's interesting, I never told you this, but here I have. It's a PhD thesis written by an Iranian on the effects of TTouch on angina.
Okay.
Yeah, and because they found it really works. And you can do it yourself. That's the thing that's so interesting with it. And we have one of our practitioners, he's Portuguese born from Austin. And he swears that TTouch saved his life because he had such, what do you call it? His heart racing. I forget what that's called.
Well, panic attacks, basically. Yeah.
No, it's when the heart just races, and he was able to, with TTouch, he's been able to overcome it.
Okay. Because
he came into the dog trainings. And of course, in every dog training, we always teach people to do TTouch on themselves. Yeah, and this is the thing about heart math, the fact that they have that M wave, and you can measure when you come into this activation of the forebrain for learning and overriding the primitive part of the brain for panic. And then the other huge influence in my life, Rupert, has been Jerry Jampolsky. He is the author of many, many books, and the one that we use all the time in our trainings is Love is Letting Go of Fear.
Love is letting go of fear.
Fear, yeah.
Yeah.
I had an experience, 1984, at the Chris Griscom's Light Institute in Galisteo. I was having a session with what they call needles to the sky points. I could punch needles in the head. And I suddenly could feel that every cell in my body felt the fear of all humans on the planet.
Mm.
We all do.
Yeah.
It's true. We're an accumulation. It's not just the ancestors, that just 7 generations. It's everybody.
Mhm.
And so I was doing a session to release that just from knowing it. And I went for a walk with Chris after. And I said, okay, so Chris, when we release this fear in the cells, what's left? Of course, it's love. And that's where Jerry Jampolsky and his Center for Attitudinal Healing comes in, because I've worked with him for many, many years. And
The Center for Attitudinal Healing.
Center.
The Center for Attitudinal Healing.
Yeah. Mm. And this is something they put out, and it's like, joy comes with forgiveness. This is, may every step you take be one of forgiveness. It's the attitudinalhealing.org. He just died a couple of years ago. I can't remember if he was close to 100, but I knew him very well, and his wife, Diane Cirincione. And we did a workshop together in Australia for ourselves, for soul retrieval, our own souls. And just this concept of forgiveness,
Mhm.
that is forgiving ourselves when we make a mistake, forgiving others, this whole concept. You must know of Ho'oponopono, right?
I do. But could you please explain that for our listeners?
Yes. And it's a Hawaiian prayer of forgiveness. And actually, one of my very favorite books is a German book written by Rupert Dupre. And anybody's interested, go on YouTube, because he has wonderful free talks all the time. And the Hawaiian, it's 4 phrases, the basic. And it's really simple. And it saved me in some amazing situations. It's, I'm sorry for whatever it is. Please forgive me. Thank you, because the forgiveness is done. And I love you. And it's the I love you that shocks most people, because they think it's only to love someone else. But actually, it's also just as hard for most people to say I love ourselves, because as Western people, we're taught that you shouldn't love yourself. It's kind of an interesting thing. But I tell you where I learned how to say that and mean it in every person I look at, whether there's a problem or not. And it's actually through a book called The Book of Ho'oponopono. Let me spell it for you, okay? Or do you have it? Do you know it?
No, I'm writing on 4 stages of the prayer first. So I'm sorry for ...
I'm sorry for whatever. Doesn't matter.
Please forgive me.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love you. And you can say this to yourself as well as to somebody else.
Exactly. For anything you do, or to a horse or a dog or something they do. Now, the thing is,
so give us the strange Hawaiian name for this.
yes, it's capital HO apostrophe OPONO, and then repeat it again, OPONO, Ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono.
Yep.
Please, I'm sorry for blah.
What it-
Please
Yep.
forgive me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love you. And it's the I love you that stops most people, because they certainly can't love something they think we did something wrong.
Yes.
And it's essential for our joy, actually. And
Do we need to make self-forgiveness a practice if we're going to even think about helping anybody else?
well, it would be a judgment on my part, but I think that if you have any feeling of guilt, absolutely. If you know that you've been doing the very best you can, forgive whatever you've done. I mean, Rupert, those of us who've worked with horses for many, many years have done things to horses that we would never do today.
Sure.
And the beautiful thing is horses forgive us.
Yes, they do.
That's the thing. And there's no reason to feel guilty, because we were only doing the best we could. And But what I find most people can't do is say, I love you to themselves if they've made a mistake.
Sure. Well, we're because we're brought up to completely not do that.
Yeah.
That's drummed out of us so early
Yeah.
that's one of the most radical acts of rebellion anyone can make, is to say I love you to yourself. That's a total disruption of our entire societal norm. The church can't operate with that. I don't mean Christianity. I don't mean spirituality. I don't mean Christ. I mean the church. Yeah.
Yes.
You can't operate with people going around saying they love themselves all the time, because then you don't need an intermediary between them and Christ or between them and God. They're all right, so they don't need to pay you a tithe, and
Exactly. Let me tell you how you can overcome this, dear listener.
Okay.
And I wouldn't have known, because, how do you forgive somebody who's done something horrendous to you? And that's, quote, unforgivable. And it's in the book of Ho'oponopono.
The book of Ho'oponopono.
And it's by Luke, Luc Bodan. He's a MD. And
By Luc Bodan.
Yeah. And it's Luc Bodan and another Bodan. I forget her name. I don't know if it's wife or daughter. And a third one. So it's the reason it's important to know it's by three authors, because he's written many books. And it's the one by three. And in it is the explanation that I got from one of my Swiss friends who reads French, who is fluent in French. She said that I love you is addressed to the divine consciousness in every cell in the body. It's to the divine within. I can say that to anybody, no matter what they've done. When you recognize that forgiveness it's necessary to change our world and the world.
Wise words, Linda. And definitely words that we want to be holding in our hearts and our heads and our guts while we're wandering around arenas, forests with ponies and people on them.
Yeah.
We have passed the 2-hour mark, and all this leaves me is wanting more. So I would like to come back to you with this, and can we go back into Equine Assisted World with you in a few weeks, and let's look at this whole concept of self disregard, let's say, and how we can begin to dance with this in a way that we can create healing and joy. And then again, how this might work in the equestrian context and in the equine context, that we could just go so much deeper here. And I haven't even asked you about tendons and fitness and all these other things that we need to talk about too, which are, what I love about the conversations with you is that they go from the absolutely practical, like, if you touch like this, or if you pay attention to this ligament, or, if you pay attention to the fascia, to, of course, the absolute spiritual, because how can you separate one from the other? Because the cells are the spirits are the cells. And then back again, and then you bring it down to really useful techniques. Okay, this circle and a half way of touching.
Quarter.
Sorry?
A circle and a quarter.
A circle and a quarter, sorry. A circle and a quarter, moving the skin lightly and the tarantula pulling the plow. And I know of many, many other forms of TTouch which have amazing effects on horses and humans. So please, let's come back to this.
Can we give your listeners, like, the first book on forgiveness, the Hawaiian book of forgiveness that I recommend is the German author Ulrich Dupre, Dupre. Dupre.
Dupre, D-U, like the French, D-U-P-R-E, Ulrich Dupre.
Two E's on the
Oh,
end.
2 E's, Dupre. Okay, Ulrich Dupre.
And that's like a wonderful overview of the work that will give you what you can make a huge difference.
What's the title of the book?
Ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono.
Okay. And the subtitle, let me look here.
Okay.
It's a little tiny book, a little book.
Okay, I see it. Okay, a slim volume.
Yeah, and it's the Hawaiian forgiveness ritual as the key to your life's fulfillment.
The Hawaiian forgiveness ritual as the key to your life's
Fulfillment.
Brilliant.
And the book of Ho'oponopono, it's the Hawaiian practice of forgiveness and healing. And it's, I always get it, it's Luke Bodin.
Bodin, okay.
And Natalie Bodin.
Natalie Bodin, the book of Ho'oponopono.
And Jean Garcia is the last, but it does, you'll find it. 3. Yes.
Okay, I've got my reading list. We'll pick it up when we reconvene on this, because now, for listeners who want to know more about TTouch, what do they do? Where do they go?
We're just in the process of modernizing our website. So what we have now is just go to TTouch.com.
TTouch.com. Yep, easy.
Or, if you want to actually get a free introduction to it, go to learn.ttouch.ca for Canada. That's my sister, Robin Hood.
I love it. She's called Robin Hood.
I know, my maiden name is Hood. She's 15 years younger than I and works around the world like I do. And I named her. She kept that when she married Phil Pretty.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All I can say, listeners, is we can all use mentors. Every good thing that I do or have done has come from a mentor. Linda is one of our primary mentors. Don't do yourself out of the opportunity to be mentored by Linda Tellington-Jones. There are many books. You can learn her stuff online. You'll see. Just go on TTouch.com.
It's also on YouTube. We have stuff on it.
Right. Just go down the rabbit hole, and we'll be having Linda back on. Also, if you want to know Linda's life story and how she arrived at all of this, go across to our other podcast, Live Free, Ride Free, where we talk about self-actualization, people living self-actualized lives. And she tells us her autobiography there and how all this happened, because it's good to have that background. Okay, so you'll be hearing more from Linda on this show. All right. Linda, thank you.
Until the next time.
Until the next time. All right.
Hey, Rupert, may the force be with you.
May it be with you too. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Join our website, newtrailslearning.com, to check out our online courses and live workshops in Horseboy Method, Movement Method, and Athena. These evidence-based programs have helped children, veterans, and people dealing with trauma around the world. We also offer a horse training program and self-care program for riders on longridehome.com. These include easy-to-do online courses and tutorials that bring you and your horse joy. For an overview of all shows and programs, go to rupertisaacson.com. See you on the next show. And please remember to press subscribe and share.